Hello. Oh my gosh. So I know this was very impromptu. I'm going to get Facebook on live. Hello. Welcome. Okay. So I am trying something totally different. So you have to bear with me. We're officially trying Facebook and YouTube at the same time. I have no idea how it's going to flow. It might look a little wonky. We're working on getting the kinks out. Okay. Hello. Okay, so today we are talking about Ascend, and we have so much to talk about. So guess what? The Soul Aligned Life Academy monthly membership is officially open. There is so much to celebrate. This has been an amazing shift for the Awaken state. It has been so many years doing this work, and I just felt really called to start offering a membership to really cement these concepts even further. And the Soul Aligned Life Academy is something that I put my heart and soul into. And I'm so excited to get started and debut it. And most of all, it is officially open. It's just started opening. It was open yesterday. It's open all week at a founding member price. I'm saying this from the get-go because I want to be transparent with you. And most of all, I want to talk about owning your intuitive power. So first, let me know where you're from. Are you guys tuning in and watching? Hi. Welcome. Okay, we are live on both Facebook and YouTube. I'm going to do my little intro and then we'll dive right in. So as you know, I am wearing my hat because we are celebrating the Soul Aligned Life Academy opening its doors. I'm so excited for what this amazing program is going to offer. And most importantly, I'm really stoked to kind of create this more of a framework curriculum around soul alignment. This has been something that's come up so many times throughout all of my client work, throughout various programs. It just keeps coming back to me. It's almost like that moment where it's like you keep running from your destiny and it just keeps showing up. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So hello, say you're here, say hi, and we'll get started soon. So if you don't know me, my name is Ashley. I am a mindset coach and empowerment coach. I love to talk on all things Kundalini. I'm great at really diving deep into spiritual awakening. I had a spiritual awakening in 2011. And basically what happened is I started seeing energy for the first time. And as a result from that, it just put me on the fast track of a Kundalini awakening. And I've been here ever since. And online. So basically what happened is I had a Tumblr blog that people could submit Q&A to me. And what happened is I started to realize that, oh my gosh, I'm like really mentoring people on spiritual awakening. And what happened is as I started having so many people come to me for free that I ended up starting to create a website around everything I've been learning. And instead I started offering more blogs and more videos down the line. And as a result, here we are. So welcome. I'm going to take a minute here to adjust. Okay. All right. So it's like 10 a.m. here. I'm like still drinking my coffee. Okay. I'll give you guys a few more minutes to head on. So like I said, what I really want to talk about today in Ascend is owning your intuitive power, because this is something that has come up for me so many times. I actually, the first episode on the podcast that I released, I went really heavily into my thoughts on why we suppress our intuitive power. And I really wanted to touch on that a little today because I think it's so powerful to realize that these things that are happening to you, you know, maybe like you've always felt different. Like this was something that was really prevalent for me is I noticed that right away, I always felt like I was always different. Like I always had these supernatural things happen in my life. Like growing up, there was always these things about like ghosts and like we did Ouija boards. And there was this, it was always there. It's like the spirit world was always there, you know? I remember going camping once and my cousin and I did a Ouija board and that thing was like flying. It was like, so it literally freaked me out. And I remember this moment distinctively because it said something about how I needed to write a book about faith. And, here I am teaching a lot about faith when it comes to spiritual awakening. And it's just interesting how when we have this gift inside of us of really owning our intuition, and we do have a gift for it. And, everyone can access their intuition, but people who have a spiritual awakening, people who are more sensitive to energy, who are more hypersensitive to basically, being an empath or having that psychic sense and psychic abilities such as clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, these things are more prevalent to us even growing up, but perhaps we were either suppressed or we just didn't fully understand that part of ourselves. And now that we're in the midst of a spiritual awakening, it's like everything is turning online. It's suddenly prevalent in everything we do. And as a result, it might be really time to start owning your intuitive power if you're not. Because here's what I've noticed is like you've always felt you were different. You always felt like there was something more to life. There was something more going on behind the scenes. And when you think about it in terms of just looking at spiritual awakening as a whole, like spiritual awakening as a whole is, I've said this before, it feels like your spiritual self and your physical self are coming at this point where you're bridging the gap between these two different worlds that you didn't know existed. And now you do know, you're now consciously aware that they exist. And because you're consciously aware that they exist, now you're starting to realize that you as a whole, as a person who is spiritually awakening, your job is to bridge the gap between those two worlds. And so as you were growing up, you were always aware of the spiritual world. And I think this is very common for indigo children, star children, crystal children, and all of us who are in the midst of spiritual awakening. We are here for the revolution. And if you think about it, this concept of bridging the gap between the spiritual self and the physical self is really at the forefront of really looking at your intuition. Because what I've really learned is that, when it comes to really owning your intuitive power, it's about also accepting that it's normal. It's a normal part of you. It's a distinctively normal part of you. And what you have to realize is you've always had it. You've always had it since you were a child. But maybe down the line, you were either suppressed, or you thought it was wrong, or you thought it was bad or evil. Maybe you thought it was too witchy. Maybe you thought it was like too, maybe you had a religious upbringing. So it's like too, much in alignment with Satan. We don't know. Like everyone's different, but there's a part of us where we've made intuition wrong, bad, unsafe. And as a result, we're suppressing that part of ourselves that we could turn on to full capacity, and it would drastically help our lives because our intuition is connected to our spiritual alignment. And so one of the forefront things that we're going to be talking about a ton in the membership is really learning how to own your intuitive gifts. And I've said this numerous times because it's something that's been coming up so many times for me. And I think it's really important to touch on this because if you're going through a spiritual awakening, either you're owning your intuitive gift or you're suppressing your intuitive gifts. And that's at the forefront of really understanding your own personal spiritual awakening journey, is looking at your intuition as a whole and as a concept. So as I was saying, when you have your spiritual self and your physical self, a lot of what occurs during spiritual awakening is all of a sudden everything turns online. And the spiritual self and the physical self are starting to bridge the gap, and you're starting to realize that they're connected. They're not separate like you were originally taught. So if you suppressed your intuition growing up and you felt that it was wrong or bad, or you were in a place where you felt really like disconnected from your spiritual power, it can really hold you back in so many ways and almost self-sabotage you, because you're more likely to be operating from a place of the survival mind where you're not allowing your intuition to guide you. So as a result, because of that, you have like this distinct moment where you have to realize that it's about learning to tone in on your intuition, but also tap in fully to your potential. And looking at these things as not just an aloof term, or even, looking at like purpose work or soul work or all of these concepts as something that's abnormal, because that's the thing, is we've made them too abnormal for our personal awareness and our personal understanding. All right, I see some highs. Hi, how's it going? Let me know you're here. Let me know where you're from. I live in Indiana in a little town. I love that we have readers and subscribers all over the world. It just amazes me. You know, I came from a little town in Indiana, and like I talk to all sorts of people from New Zealand to Bulgaria to New York. It's so fun. I honestly love having an online business for that reason. It's just so cool. So I love knowing where you're from. So please drop a comment. Let me know you're here. Okay. So what I was saying here is, when you think about your intuition, the hugest thing you have to realize is, if you've made it abnormal in your life, you might be having some almost disconnection between how you're connecting with your soul, your higher self. And so a lot of people who come to me and say that they have a hard time connecting or hearing their higher self, 9 times out of 10, it's due to the fact that they've been suppressing their intuition. And when you think about it, it makes sense, because as society, we've made it into this abnormal thing to tap into our intuitive gifts, to manifest, to have, learn how to heal ourselves from the inside out. All of these things are actually very, very normal. But if you're coming at it from a paradigm where it was abnormal, it's going to feel like you're stopping and starting all the time, because there's this element of feeling disconnected from soul. There's this element of where you're relying too heavily on the mind versus the body. And because of that disconnection between the mind and the body, you're having that mind-body disconnect. And I talk about this in a ton of my courses, but the mind-body disconnect is where the mind is operating, but the body is separate from the mind. So the mind is operating from in your reality, but you've disconnected the body's intelligence from literally creating your life. And so what does that really mean? Well, it means that the mind and the body work in harmony together to create magnetism in your life. And so when you're only working from the mind, you can only work from your past conditioned self, how you grew up, your past conditioning, your current mindset, your current thoughts, your current beliefs, your current habits. All of that's dominated around your old past conditioned self. So when you look at it in terms of the mind-body disconnect, the body teaches you how to heal. The body teaches you how to manifest. The body teaches you how to own your intuition and your power. And most of all, it comes from this place of owning your personal power as a result. So when it comes to understanding your intuition, if you've made it abnormal in your life, then you're going to have those roadblocks really show up, because what's happening is you're creating the mind-body disconnect. So the body, my favorite ever quote is something that I learned from my coach like 5 or 6 years ago. And she said, if the mind doesn't believe, the feeling cannot live in the body. If the body doesn't believe, the feeling cannot live in the body. And when you look at it in that way, if the body cannot believe and the body cannot feel, it can't live in the body, which means manifestation cannot occur. So if you think about it in terms of looking at how your intuition is connected to your body, and if you're only living by the mind, you're only living by the ego. So the ego is dominating the show, essentially, which means that your survival mind is connected to the ego. That's what's dominating the show. And as a result, you're cutting off your intuition, which means you're cutting off guidance, you're cutting off quantum intelligence, you're cutting off your natural gifts. And because of that, you've now made it so abnormal to actually tap in fully to your intuitive power and your personal power. So what do we do with this? Well, when you think about it, the number one thing you have to realize is your intuition, manifestation, your ability to heal yourself. This is all normal. It's a normal thing. It is actually a normal part of you to understand this. It is not some mystical woo-woo magical thing. The problem is that we've either believed it to be that way, or we have an idea that that's how it is, but it actually isn't. And that's the thing that people are getting so tripped up about, is they've created so much separation in their mind about accessing their intuitive gifts, about owning their intuitive power, about knowing who they are, and about really looking into their own sense of how they manifest. They've made it so separate from who they actually are, but it's actually in their core identity of their soul, of who they are. So this is because of the conditioning that says it's wrong, it's evil, it's bad, it's too woo-woo, it's too magical, it's just way out there for me. It's not obviously connected to me. So we've disconnected our soul truth. We've disconnected from our soul truth. So the one thing that I really want to say is, when it comes to looking at owning your intuitive power, it's about reestablishing the connection to your higher self. It's about reestablishing that connection to your intuition and learning how to own your intuitive power. And so how do you get started doing that? Well, it comes from the awareness of really bringing in the fact that it's normal. It's so normal to own your intuition. And it's important to start practicing that with a habit, and to start owning the fact that your intuition is as real as everything else. And to start realizing that these concepts of healing yourself from the inside out and manifestation, really developing that self-trust with your intuition, all of these things are normal. But the thing is if we've been growing up thinking that they weren't, then ultimately we're going to have that disconnection feeling when it comes to trusting ourselves, developing our self-confidence with manifestation, developing our ability to heal ourselves by tuning into our body's wisdom, our power, our sense of self-sovereignty. And from this place of really looking at our own intuitive gifts and our own intuitive power, we have to realize that it comes from a place of owning your intuition naturally as a part of you. That supernatural part of you is a normal part of you. And so a lot of what you have to realize is when you come into the place of owning your intuitive power and owning your personal power, it is all about learning how to access that automatically. And that comes with realizing that it's normal and it's a natural part of you. So what happens is we've created too much separation. There's too much separation going on that is causing a disconnection from your intuition. And a lot of this is due to the survival mind. And if you were to just stop here and think about, like, how many people are being triggered right now by their survival mind? They're in fear, they're in panic, they're in anxiety, they're in dread. There's so much collective upheaval right now. When you think about it in terms of, we're being triggered by fear, we're being triggered by inflation, we're being triggered by all of this crap about economic collapse and banks and failing and all of this stuff that's happening externally. And all of this stuff is just kind of fueling the pot of the survival mind. And so it's so important to have that internal discernment of tuning back into your body and reconnecting to know that you're safe, you're supported, you have this ability to self-source your power. And in this space of owning your intuition, you're being guided and led from within. So you're not being as externally triggered by the external world, because you've developed your own self-sourcing power. And that comes with owning your intuition. And so when you think about what is the survival mind, well, here's something that's really easy to get is there's the survival mind, which is like your instinct of who you are, your ego, how you grew up. Your survival mind is the lower mind. It's the part of you that's more like the reptilian part of your brain, where you are acting on your instincts. You have your fight, flight, freeze response. And this is helping you survive. It's a very old mechanism in our nervous system, and it helps us thrive and it helps us survive. There's nothing wrong with it, but the reality is we are in a society, we're in an evolution of consciousness where we're kind of evolving out of the survival mind. And this is where spiritual awakening comes in. We have the higher mind. The higher mind is connected to our intuition. quantum intelligence, manifestation, 5D consciousness, all of these concepts we keep hearing about. So the higher mind is the part of you that is connected to the spiritual mind. It's the part of you that's connected to higher truth, quantum intelligence, infinite possibility. And it's the part of you that where you know in your core essence of who you are that love is reality, that higher truth exists, that higher truth is higher perceptions of reality. It's where enlightenment exists. It's the space where you know things that are absolute truth, such as abundance is more real than lack, or love is true reality. This concept of the higher mind is where your higher self exists. And your higher self is connected to the quantum, and it helps you personally navigate the world through your internal guidance system. I'm not just making all this crap up. You can go and read about it in neurology, because it's basically the concept of your intuitive mind versus your ego. I just find it easier to associate as you have your lower mind and then the higher mind. And the higher mind is connected to higher self. The lower mind is connected to the ego. They are not wrong. They are not good and bad. They are just a part of us, and it's a natural part of you. So when you have a spiritual awakening, what is occurring is you're starting to bridge the gap between the higher mind and the lower mind, and you're starting to bring the higher mind back into your ego, your identity. And so what occurs from this is you're starting to operate more from your intuition versus just survival, where you're externally triggered, you're reactive, you're more in a place where you're finding yourself more emotionally triggered. So it's like you see something out in the world and it immediately triggers you. Instead, what occurs is when you start operating more from the higher mind and you start tuning back into your intuition, you're creating a self-sourcing power. And so what occurs from this is instead of being externally triggered by everything that takes you out, instead you have the discernment and the foundation of being tuned into your intuition. And this is the place where things can come and knock you down, but your foundation is so solid that it doesn't trigger you as hard anymore because your intuition is stronger. And this is what occurs when you start disabling some of those mechanisms that's happening from the survival mind, because a lot of that is just an emotional trigger, either from trauma or childhood or just conditioning. It doesn't even have to be trauma. It could even just be conditioning of how the world is this energy of scarcity consciousness. And so the higher mind operates more from the energy of abundance and flow and our intuitive power. So you can start to see that when we have a spiritual awakening, what we're doing is we're bridging that gap between the two worlds. And so while it seems like it's very complicated, it's actually not. It's about learning to tune back in to your intuition. And it's about learning how you have the ability to develop self-trust and self-sovereignty within yourself instead of being externally triggered. And that to me is an incredibly powerful place to be, because at that point, you're no longer being emotionally reactive, because you've started disabling that, because the higher truth, your higher self, is more powerful, more stronger than your circumstance. And that's one of the most powerful things to witness and to feel and to believe, because when you know that, manifesting becomes easier, healing becomes easier, understanding the right moves to make, knowing how to make the right decisions, because your intuition knows the way. Your higher self, your soul, knows the solutions you need. In this space of knowing that life could be easier, that you could operate more from a place of spiritual alignment, this is what it means to really be dropped into your spiritual alignment. Okay, so we got some people. Hi. Okay, so really, when it comes to this concept of ascend into your spiritual power, gaining back confidence in your intuition, gaining back that element of reducing overthinking, overanalyzing, and trading it out for soul certainty, This all comes with really honing in on enabling how to connect to the higher mind. And so a lot of what we're going to be doing in the Soul Aligned Manifesting, not manifesting, the Soul Aligned Life Academy is we're going to start creating a curriculum around how you can start to navigate spiritual awakening successfully with this core central framework of tapping into your spiritual alignment. And so one thing I did want to mention is there's this concept of the law of vacuum and the law of vibration. And when you start to understand the law of vibration is working with the law of vacuum, it starts to become a little bit easier to understand that we all have universal laws that are working all the time. And so the law of vacuum states, nature abhors a vacuum. Now, what is empty must be replenished and refilled by natural law. Now, the law of vibration states that everything is vibrating and oscillating at a given rate in time. These are literally universal laws. I'm not just making shit up. Okay, so the law of vacuum states that everything is energy and everything is vibrating at a given velocity in a given oscillation. Now, everything is vibrating all the time. And you have the law of vacuum going on. So the law of vacuum is all about releasing work, and vibration is all about how to understand reality, because vibration is how you're attracting in your life. And so when it comes to understanding spiritual alignment, it's important to see that you have this concept in science called the observer effect. And the observer effect states that what we observe is what we attract. And this is due to an experiment that they did called the double slit experiment, where when they observed that the energy turned into a particle instead of just a wave, when they observed that particle. So when the particle was being observed, it was at a point of awareness where it started changing and transforming into a solid particle. Now, before, that energetic substance was just a wave. And when we observed it, it changed form and it changed shape and it transformed into something else. Well, when it comes to manifestation, we're doing that all the time. When we absorb something, when we observe how something is with our mind, with our focus, this is our point of attraction, our point of awareness. And so one thing I realized a long time ago is when you have your level of understanding the law of vibration, you have to realize that you're vibrationally observing all the time. And so if you're vibrationally observing all the time, and that's what you are attracting with your law of attraction, which is basically called your RAS, your reticular activating system, the law of vibration states that when you look at it in terms of looking at your personal identity and how you are attracting, you start to see that your RAS is literally the magnetism that is attracting what you want in your life. So to bring this back more simply, the law of attraction is how the observer effect works. So what do you think is happening when you're getting stuck in the survival mind is you're observing just from the survival mind. You're observing from your ego. You're observing from fear. You're observing from doubt. You're observing from uncertainty. And that's what you're starting to attract in your life. And if you think about it in terms of looking at how you're observing and how you're attracting, this is why we have so many issues and misalignment going on in our lives, because it's at that point of the observer effect. It's vibrationally attracting things we don't want due to the survival mind. And so if you were to just think about it for a second, and you can try this at home even, is here's how you learn that this is like actual truth, that it works, is there's this thing called your reticular activating system. Your reticular activating system shows you, it basically filters out information like Google. So if you were to think about it in terms of like, you type into Google, like trains, and then you start to go to a search engine. You're on the search engine, right? And it's filtering out all the information to just talk about trains. Well, your reticular activating system does the same thing. So you have a thought of, let's see, let's play. I don't always know if I can trust myself, for example. I don't always know if I can decide for myself and trust for myself. That was actually one of my old ones. Okay, so that's what I observe. So now that's what I'm going to attract, because that's the belief, that's the association of what I'm thinking. So it's like you can try this at home with something as simple as a color. So if you were to just go outside and say, I'm thinking of the color red, and then your brain will literally start pinpointing out the stimuli of red, because that's how your actual attraction power works. It focuses on filtering out the information that you give it. You could even try it with something random, like I only see yellow cars or something like that. And then suddenly you'll be like, holy shit, everyone seems to have a yellow car out of nowhere. This is so weird. What you'll notice is you've filtered out the information, and that becomes how you observe. You change the wave into a particle because you're now observing that. But it did already exist. It already existed. It was already there. Well, the spiritual world is the same freaking thing, because it's always there. It already existed, but you weren't observing it before. Now you're in a spiritual awakening, and suddenly you're observing it. Suddenly you're attracting all of the things that are basically happening to you. Is you're starting to open up your intuitive power. You're starting to open up higher faculties in your mind. You're starting to open up to clairsentience, clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentient, whatever. And because of that, there's this element here where you start to see that it already existed. Manifestation already existed. Healing myself already existed. These things were always real, but I wasn't observing them before, or I was conditioned to suppress that part of myself so I couldn't see them, or I was in a place where I couldn't fully like tap into hearing it correctly because I couldn't trust myself. I couldn't decide for myself. I couldn't see it. So in this element of where we're observing differently, I'm trying to like really cover a lot in a short period of time. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Oh, hi, Melissa. Hi. All right. So basically, where was I at? Let's just pause for a second. Your disconnect from the body makes you rely too heavily on the mind. Yes, 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 yes. And it's so powerful to realize that. Yes, exactly. And see, like, that's the thing though, too, is like, we kind of have this misperception of the ego. Like, we consider that the ego is bad, but it's not really bad. It's more like an outdated computer model. If you think about it, it's like an outdated system running on our computer, and we just need to upgrade the software. And when we start to learn to upgrade the software by understanding our higher mind and really looking at higher intelligence, learning how to reconnect to soul, to reestablish that connection to your higher self, you're starting to bring in more clarity, awareness, and all the things, because you're now tapped into your intuition. And so one of the things that's really, really fun and really empowering to know about your intuition is when you're tapped into your intuition, you're starting to tap into, you're connecting to quantum. So that's one thing that's really powerful to realize is when you're tapped into the higher mind, you're connecting to the quantum reality. So you're connecting to, it's like you have a tether or like an energetic cord, and you're connecting to quantum. So that's why you're able to connect to infinite possibility. That's where you're able to open up more to possibilities and new opportunities and new awareness and new solutions, new possibilities, because you're not just operating from the past anymore. You're starting to co-create in the present. You're starting to allow yourself to have that quantum connection, and you're starting to enable this energy of where things are just coming to you at random. They're not just coming to you at random. They're coming to you from the quantum field. They're coming to you because it's quantum intelligence, and you're starting to learn how to access that. So what I quickly learned is that the more that I develop my relationship to higher self, the more that I start learning how to build the skill set of my intuition, I'm starting to enable that connection. And so what I realized really quickly is it's not just about one meditation or one off thing. It's a daily conversation. It's a daily relationship that you're developing. And so it's also about developing this skill set, because you have to realize that it's like, if you've been suppressing these things for so long, it is like riding a bike again. It is like learning a new skill. It's like developing a new habit, because you're starting to develop your intuition when before you were suppressing that part of yourself. You didn't trust yourself. You had a lot of self-doubt. You had a lot of negativity. You had a lot of negative self-talk. You had this element of uncertainty, or maybe anxiety and fear and dread, and this what does Eckhart Tolle call it? He calls it, you have disconnected from time, or no. He says psychological time gap, the psychological time gap, because you're in the psychological time gap of the past and the future. So you have to redevelop your sense of present awareness. Yeah, exactly. This is a wrong way to be rational. Yes, exactly. And that's the other thing is, like, I think as a society as a whole, so many of us have grown up feeling either emotionally suppressed or intuitively suppressed. And this is why we have it's like we have faulty GPS systems, because, well, society programmed us that way in so many ways. So it's like we have this self-learning process now of learning how to reestablish connection to higher self, learning how to own our intuitive power and our personal power, learning how to step back into higher self, and learning that this is normal. It's not something abnormal. And so it's like we have to realize that it's always been there. And so the point I was making about the law of vacuum is you have to realize that when you're doing this healing work and you're doing this releasing work, there's the law of vacuum going on that's also kind of like enabling this energy of lack. And so a lot of people who are in scarcity consciousness, they're kind of just operating from this place of lack in their mind because of the law of vacuum. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because vacuum is empty space longing to be filled. Well, why are we not filling it? It's because we're not tapping into the higher mind. So it's like we're constantly on empty, which is really a suppression from our soul, our intuition, our intuitive power. So it's like we have that experience of lack consciousness because we're not tapped into the abundance within ourselves. And it's interesting when you think about it, because usually when we're in the survivalistic mind, when we're really triggered or we're really anxious or we're really fearful, we're usually tapped into looking at lack in our lives. And that's that observer effect, right? I love how everything kind of goes full circle, even though I didn't even know what I was, I didn't plan any of this. So this is just right from this is just complete download. So it's like you have that element of realizing that you're in lack consciousness, and that's because of the survival mind. So it's like everything goes back to that. And so one of the things that we're going to hugely go over in the Soul Aligned Life Academy, Soul Aligned Life Academy, I got to get the name right, is I want to really hone in on how you can start to build your skill set with spiritual alignment, and by owning the higher mind, and how to build your connection to the higher mind, and inevitably how you can start to disable just operating from the survival mind, because this is what holds so many people back from their true potential. Okay. So All right. Did you guys have any questions? I think I said all I wanted to say today. I just wanted to kind of kick it off. This is kind of the foundation. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to talk more about the actual framework and how you can start to apply this more. And today, I want you to just kind of simmer on these topics, kind of allow it in, and allow, soul higher self to really kind of activate you, because this was just all an intuitive drop that came in. And thank you all for watching. This was kind of interesting. I really thought it was kind of cool to do both YouTube and Facebook at the same time. I will do more of these in the future. This is kind of fun. Okay. Do you feel like you would prefer just YouTube? Because we could also just do YouTube. I'm really been loving YouTube lately. Okay. Okay. If you guys don't have any questions, I'm going to leave you at that. And I would like to say that the Soul Aligned Manifesting, or no, I always keep saying manifesting. The Soul Aligned Life Academy is officially open and enrolling. I will leave a link down below for you. You can go to the awakenstate.net if you're interested in enrolling and joining us for the new membership. We are enrolling at a founding member price, so it's very, very low cost. And I purposely did this because this is the starting opening doors. So you are going to lock in your founding member rate. And unless you cancel your membership, you stay with that rate for years to come if you decide to stay. So eventually, basically, we're going to be having live workshops, just like kind of like this with Q&A. And we'll start that in the fall. And what basically happens is every single month you get a new monthly bundle that will be downloaded onto your portal. And so you'll get a monthly bundle on a core topic, such as how to own your intuitive power or overcoming resistance, working through limited beliefs, mindset work, learning how to heal ascension symptoms, and so forth. Some of the new ones that are coming out right away are soul purpose work through the chakras, magnetic aligned action, and the intuition bundle. And also talking to higher self. Those are the 4 ones that I know are directly coming in right over the next few months. And finally, what I wanted to say is you also have a beautiful community of like-minded souls, so we can geek out and talk on all things spiritual alignment and soul and spiritual awakening. So if you're interested in joining, I will leave the links down below for you. And I'll see you guys next time.